Good morning everyone. Is my voice audible to all?
Yes, morning sir. Yes, it is audible.
Okay, nice. Okay, so my name is Ritvik Sasmal and my name is Ritvik Sasmal and I secured the 5th rank in the Odisha Judicial Service in the year of 2016, and I was in the service for 2 years, and after that I resigned to, please come in, pursue my interest as an advocate and as an educator. So I'll basically be teaching you guys constitutional law and jurisprudence. But first let's begin with constitution, right? Am I still audible to everyone?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, sir, yes.
Okay, so can you please, I can't see you on the video, but can you please tell me your names individually? Yes, the online students first, please.
Sir, it's zraet.
Okay.
Good morning, sir. This is Anisha Kar.
Okay.
Good morning, sir. Myself is Zraet.
Okay.
Good morning, sir. This is Aarohan.
Okay. All right. So I'm assuming that this is your first. Good morning, sir. I'm assuming that this is your first class on Constitution.
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay.
But we are
All right. So in any case, I'll give you an introduction again on. Okay, sir.
Thank you. So, namaskar all of you. So, as I had informed you, so we'll be starting with Constitution on the regular classes on Tuesday and Friday and Saturday. So, Ritvik sir will be taking your classes. And after contract is over on the Sunday batch, in the regular batch it is finished, in the Sunday batch once contract is over, so on Sundays we'll be having jurisprudence. Okay, after contract is over on Sunday. So those who have been preparing for Odisha Judicial Service, you would be knowing Ritvik sir. So a brief biodata or a few words about him. So basically he has done his graduation in law, LLB honors from HNLU, and his special paper or specialization is on Constitution and IPR, and he was also selected for IIM, Indian Institute of Management, after CAT, but he was more interested in judiciary, and in his first attempt in OJS 2016 he got rank 5 in OJS, and after that, after serving for around 2 years, he resigned voluntarily because he wanted to explore other opportunities, especially independent practice. So that is his passion, and apart from that, he's a multifarious personality. He is also interested in multiple instruments. Okay, he has his own YouTube channel for that also. So he'll be taking initially he'll be taking jurisprudence and constitution. So I welcome him, and I'm very sure that you will be immensely benefiting from his knowledge, experience, and how to write the answers. That is very, very important, because a lot of students who have their knowledge base is quite good, but from exam point of view, how you have to write the answer so that you get good marks and get a good rank. So no one better to tell you that. Okay, someone who has secured a very good rank in the first attempt. Okay, so you are having a mix of faculty profiles. Okay, like your CPC sir is very, very experienced, is very senior. Then you have young faculties also who have been achievers in their own domain. Okay, so I wish you all the best, and over to you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so I would like to thank sir for that wonderful introduction. Anyway, let's begin. So one primary thing that I want to talk about first here is that most of you would probably have a fear of constitutional law, right? And I know that that fear is well founded. Why is it well founded? Because this book that you're seeing over here, this is a basic textbook of constitutional law. This is MP Jain's Indian constitutional law, right? It's one of the finest works that you'll find on Indian constitutional law in the law book market. Of course, you can use the other books also, but I think this is the best, and most importantly, because I am teaching you, you don't have to read this book. All that you have to stick to are the notes that I dictate to you, are the cases that I make you refer to, right? You don't have to worry about anything else, whether it is for the prelims or for the mains. Now, one thing that we notice, mostly in prelims, if you ask any aspirant who has appeared the exam, no one attempts the constitutional law portion, mostly. Why? Because they get scared by the vastness of it, right? I would like to get a response from the online students. So what is your stance on the prelims questions that you've come across in constitutional law? You get 10 questions in each subject, as you know, but in constitutional law you get 10 questions from the entire vast portion, right? So the only problem that you face is with remembering facts. If you notice one thing about constitutional law, it is very factual when it comes to prelims exams, right? When it comes to mains exams, how many of you have gone through the mains questions? Okay, let me tell you something. Constitution and jurisprudence is one of the easiest subjects that you can deal with for mains exam point of view. I'll tell you why. Now, when you, let's say you take property law, right? You have many concepts and you have many possible problem-based questions that you'll be dealing with, okay? The same thing applies for even contract law, right? When it comes to constitutional law, remember, if you just look at the pattern of questions from, let's say, 2011 to 2021, all the questions that you can take care of, there are only very specific mains questions that you'll come across. You'll find for sure a question on fundamental rights, okay? In fact, there is a good chance that you'll find at least 2 to 3 questions on fundamental rights. You'll find a question on directive principles of state policy. You'll find a question on election of president. You must have seen that. What are the other questions you'll find? You'll find a question on separation of powers, right? Whether the Indian constitution can be characterized as federal or not. So on and so forth. If you go through all the previous year constitution papers, you'll see that it is not asking you anything new. There will never be a question on, for example, part 10 of the constitution, which is to do with scheduled areas. Do you ever get a mains question on that? No, right? But see, this is where your prelims becomes a little significant, because in prelims you might be asked these questions such as which part of the constitution deals with scheduled areas, right? Now you might be wondering that to answer this question you will have to study the entirety of part 10. That is not correct. You don't have to do that, right? What you have to do is just one clear reading of the Bare Act without dealing with the unnecessary portions, okay? So I'll be telling you what these unnecessary portions are. Anyway, so let's begin. This is the basic All right. So let's begin, okay? And as I teach you, please try and understand that don't look at it from just a prelims perspective or a mains perspective. Prelims is a very small part of the game. It's not as difficult as you would like to think, because at the end of the day, if you know 41 questions, you're through. If you know 40 questions, you're through. You don't need to know more than that, right? To achieve that target, the structure, the flow in which you should study these papers are study Limitation Act, for example. Why? Because it has 32 sections, that's all. And out of those 32 sections, you'll be mostly asked questions from the first 10 to 18 sections, not beyond that, right? After that, go for for instance, last year it was introduced the PWDV Act. Again, another short law, right? Go for Hindu Succession Act. In this way, you will notice that to take care of prelims, all you have to do is go through just 5 to 6 papers that have very few sections, individually speaking. Okay? Now, but since you are doing that, you might as well try and top the exam also, isn't it? To be able to do that, you need to also know where and how to deal with constitution. Okay? So as I teach you, remember that I'll be telling you that these are very prelim specific points. So you just have to put an underline or make some sort of a note indicating that this is significant for prelims. Okay? And when we deal with mains related portions, remember that I'll be giving you a somewhat detailed analysis of case laws. But again, don't make a distinction between the two. Both are quite significant in their own respects. At the same time, remember that some of you might choose jurisprudence, constitution and jurisprudence as the optional, right? And as we know, if you're becoming a judge, it is very essential that you understand, the philosophy behind the law, okay, or the science of the law. Jurisprudence is the philosophy or the science behind the law. What are rights? What are obligations? What is sovereignty? Right? What is separation of powers? What is possession and ownership? Of course, all those are other things which are not very much related to constitutional law. But I'll also be talking about those things. Okay? Or for instance, you might have come across these two fundamental terms. Positivism, natural law theory. Right? What is positivism? Positivism is when you look at the law as it is, as statements, as it is given. You are not supposed to go into the background of the law. You're not supposed to go into the history of the law. You're supposed to treat it as it is. On the other hand, natural law theory is something that says that the law should have a minimum moral background, should have a minimum moral justification, otherwise it is not a law, right? So as I teach you constitution, remember that I'll be making a few references to what is a positivist stance, what is a natural law standpoint in any of these topics. Okay? Don't get confused. These are only so that you become, how should I say this? You start dealing with the law as a whole. You don't look at it as separate fields. Okay? Alright. So let's begin. What is a constitution? A constitution, basically defined, is an organic document that defines the structure of a government and delineates various rights and responsibilities. All right? Now, this is quite simply stated what a constitution is. No one's going to ask you a question on this, so you just need to remember this is basically the idea. If this is what the definition of a constitution is, what do you mean by constitutionalism? Please write these two terms down, the online students as well. Constitution and constitutionalism. Am I audible to the online students?
Yes, sir.
All right, all right. If you cannot follow me at a point, then you can stop me at that point and ask me a question. Okay, you guys are audible to me. Okay. So, Constitution, I've given you the definition. What do you think constitutionalism means? Any responses? Okay. Constitutionalism is when a constitution provides for a limited government. Okay? You can write this down. Constitutionalism, you can just make a bullet point stating limited government. Don't write the whole sentence. Form a sort of concept map in your head. Now, constitutionalism basically denotes separation of powers. Now, why is this significant, right? In a dictatorship, for example, we can say that if the dictator decides to write down all the laws, who is a dictator first of all? He is the executive, he is the legislature, he is the judiciary. Whatever separation might be there that he might write down, it doesn't matter because he is the last word. Okay? If he writes down a constitution, we will call it a constitution, no problem. But is it coming under the ambit of constitutionalism? No. Right? This is the difference between constitution and constitutionalism. Okay? Now, separation of powers is a very important thing, as I said, related to constitutionalism. But why is the separation of powers important? Because of another concept known as the rule of law. Okay? Write down, rule of law. Rule of law. This concept was propounded by A.V. Dicey. Dicey. A.V. D-I-C-E-Y. This is how you spell it, A.V. Dicey. In the year 1885. Just bear with me. I know that you're wondering why I'm saying about all of these concepts, but you'll most probably come across a question, what are the features of a constitution, right? I am going to make it easy for you by just explaining it to you with respect to the preamble. The preamble has an answer, that just that small paragraph is an answer to a full 25-mark question, or for any of the bit questions you might find in your prelims exams also, right? So rule of law indicates, there are 3 points under this. No arbitrary use of power. Point number 2, right to equality. Point number 3, basic liberties. Okay? You may also mention rule of law is a basic feature of the Indian Constitution. This has been held in the case of, this is a very important prelims question. Any answers? Online students, rule of law is the basic feature of the Constitution. You don't need to know right now what exactly basic feature is, but if you know this as general knowledge, it is Minerva Mills. Write down. The Minerva Mills case. Okay, all right. So now that you have these 3 basic concepts in mind, constitution, constitutionalism, and rule of law. Okay, let's start with the preamble of the Constitution. I'll tell you about historical background, but let me just give you a more conceptual introduction first. All right. Yeah.
The definition of constitution.
The definition of constitution or constitutionalism?
Constitution.
Okay. Constitution is an organic document which provides for the structure of a government and delineates basic rights and liberties. All right. Can we proceed?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So the preamble reads, and mark every single word of this because we usually ignore the preamble, right? But you'll see that there is a wealth of prelims related knowledge in the preamble itself. Okay? I'll tell you how. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a, if you're looking at your bare axe, you will see a footnote there, right after that statement, which says sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Please write down these 5 points over here separately. Sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Write them one after the other. Sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Now, just make a note under socialist and secular, the 42nd Amendment. Okay? 42nd Amendment, Act of 1976. This question has appeared in at least 5 of the last 10 prelims exams.
Sir, 42nd Amendment of?
Yes, Act of 1976. All right, so let's take a quick look at what each of these words mean. Okay? What do you mean by sovereign? It's very straightforward. Sovereign means that the government or the ruler is not subject to any external authority. You can write this down. It's important to keep writing these things because in mains exam, regardless of what paper you have, writing these sentences down makes you think legally, improves your legal language. Sovereignty denotes that the ruler or the elected government, because it could be either of these two possibilities or a few in between also, but fundamentally either the ruler or the elected government is not subject to any external authority. Okay? Now, socialist. Socialist denotes equitable distribution of material resources. Okay, now on this point of socialist, this thing was added in 1976 by the 42nd Amendment. Okay, good morning. Now you must also remember that by the 42nd Amendment a lot of directive principles were also added. Okay, they were already existing, but a lot of them were also added. Why in 42nd this amendment was made? It is important to understand a little bit of background behind that. All right. Now, if you have read this before, the right to property is not a fundamental right anymore, right? Why is it not a fundamental right? Because the state thought that it is important to ensure the equal distribution of property amongst everyone. So to support this policy, multiple laws were brought into force. Many cases have also happened. All your Golaknath or Keshavananda Bharati, all of them have to do with the fundamental cause of socialism, distribution of property. Okay? To make this very clear from the outset itself, from the beginning itself, this amendment has been made, by which socialism has been introduced as a basic feature of the constitution, you can say. Okay? Now, this under socialist you can write, this is related to directive principles of state policy as mentioned in part, this is a prelims question again, very good, part 4 of the constitution.
This is related to
Directive principles of state policy, which is in part 4 of the constitution. Okay, now because we are on this point and it's more economical to go about things logically, let us take a quick run through of what those important directive principles are. Okay, now as you know, Article 36 says that all these these are not enforceable against the state, but they are fundamental in the governance of the country. Okay, Article 39A, free legal aid. Article 40, village panchayats, as far as I remember. Yeah. 44 is Uniform Civil Code. (46) is protection of weaker classes. And 51 is promotional of international peace and security. Article 51, promotion of international peace and security. You can also mention 42, maternity relief. And Article 43, living wage. Yes. Okay, online students, are you following or do you want me to? All right, okay. Okay, so these are essentially the main directive principles that you will be asked, mostly. All right, so now let's get back to the text of the preamble. We the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular. What do you mean by secular? There is no official state religion. Write this down. Or in other words, the state does not promote any specific religion. Now again, the reason behind introducing this particular word has to do with the simple fact that India is a heterogeneous community. There are many different religious communities that are there, right? So in this situation, the guarantee has been mentioned in the preamble itself that all people of all religions will be treated equally. That is why secularism has to be an important part of this. Now, can you tell me which article gives the freedom of religion? 25. Very good. Please mention that. Article 25 deals with freedom of religion. Okay, a quick question. Is this freedom absolute? All right, very good. It's not absolute. What are the circumstances in which the state can make a law regulating a religion, for example. The wording is there in the article itself.
In cases of
Public order, morality, very good. Also, in case of secular matters like economic, financial and administrative matters, right? For example, the regulation of certain trust funds. In those cases, the state can step in and make a law. Okay? We're not going into that in detail. I'm just giving you an idea of what the word secularism and how it is connected to different parts of the constitution. Okay? Instead of reading provisions one by one, it's better to make a mental map of how each of these concepts connect to different articles. Right? Okay. Democratic republic. What do we mean by democratic? Any responses? What do we mean by democratic? What is the most basic feature of a democracy? Very good. A democracy is signified by an elected government that is responsible to the people. That's it. Now, this democracy that we are talking about, can you tell me any specific provision in the constitution that is directly related to achieving this particular goal? I'll give you a clue. We are talking about elected representatives, right? Elected representatives come from elections. Okay, so this democracy concept in the preamble is directly related to, please write down, part 15 of the constitution, which deals with elections. Okay, you can mention right under that article 324 deals with election commission, election commissioner and all of that. And article 325 deals with general electoral roll. Okay. Are you slowly being able to see the pattern that I'm developing over here? I could have just explained to you what these words mean, right? But remember that unless these words refer to something tangible, they are of no meaning, isn't it? What do we mean by republic? Online students, I need you to participate. Please feel free to speak. Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
All right. Please feel free to speak and participate in the discussion. I can hear you. Your responses are equally valuable over here. All right. So, republic means that the head of the government is an elected representative and not not a hereditary monarchical ruler. Okay, now again with reference to prelims, tell me the part of the constitution that deals with this particular concept of establishing India as a republic. Any articles that come to your mind, specific articles? It is part 5.
Election.
Exactly. Election of president, and article 52, there shall be a president of India, right? Please mention those. Part 5, then article 52, 52 says that there will be a President of India. 53 says that the executive functions will be discharged by the President of India. He is the executive head essentially. And 55, I suppose, deals with election. Yes, manner of election of president. All right. So let's proceed further. We the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic, and political. There are three different kinds of justice mentioned over here. Okay? Social justice, you can just write this down. Social justice again is directly linked to
caste.
yes, Article 14 to 18 and directive principles of state policy. Economic justice is again dealt with by directive principles of state policy. And political justice is denoted by the concept of democracy, elections, general electoral roll, all of these things. Okay, so justice, social, economic, and political. Whenever you are, coming across any of the other, any provision in the Constitution that fundamentally deals with an aspect of justice. Okay, for instance, give me the example of one provision in the Constitution that involves all of these three concepts: social justice, economic justice, and political justice. Remember that the words right before that is "and to secure to all of its citizens," isn't it? And to secure to all of its citizens justice, liberty, equality, fraternity, and so on. How is this justice secured in the Constitution? Any responses, online students? Are you following my question? I need more yeses or no's. There's just one of you responding. A remedy is provided in the form of? Very good. A remedy is provided in the form of writs, more specifically Article 32 and 226. So as you must be noticing, in the preamble just looks like very simple words that have been mentioned there for no reason at all, right? But now when you connect them with all the other provisions that are there, you'll see that it's a very logical statement itself, isn't it? Okay. Justice, social, economic, and political. Liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship. This is directly related to freedom of speech and expression and freedom of religion, right? Article 19 and
20.
Article 25. Very good. Equality of status and opportunity. Article 14 to 16. And to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and the integrity of the nation. What does this part mean? What do you mean by fraternity?
So brotherhood.
Very good. Brotherhood. Community of people. No differences between people existing or coexisting together. Okay? This deals with your weaker sections of the society. Economically, socially and educationally weaker sections of the society. Okay? Assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. In our Constituent Assembly, this 26th day of November 1949, this is also important from prelims perspective, do hereby adopt, enact and give to ourselves this Constitution, right? So if your question is when was the Constitution adopted, the answer is not 26th January 1950, it's this date, 26 November 1950, 1949, sorry. Okay, all right. So this much should have given you a basic idea of what the Constitution is all about, right? Let's just quickly talk a little bit about the features of the Constitution. I'll connect them back to what we have just studied, all right? So first of all, this is a, please write down, modern Constitution. You can make a heading, features of the Constitution. Under this heading itself, you'll get a plethora of prelims related questions. I'll tell you how. So this Constitution has been adopted and enacted in the 20th century, right? So we can say that it's a very young Constitution, isn't it? But do you realize that there were constitutions existing before that also? For example, the
Government of India at 19.
Of course, we are dealing with that also, but I'm talking about influences from other countries. The American Constitution, okay? So, please mention American Constitution and you can put a hyphen and write down fundamental rights. What I mean to indicate by this is that we borrowed the idea of fundamental rights from the American Constitution. In the same way, we took the idea of directive principles of state policy from, yes, the Irish Constitution. Directive principles of state policy from Irish Constitution. What about the concept of fundamental duties? The concept of fundamental duties. Which countries' law inspired the inclusion of fundamental duties in Indian Constitution?
Germany.
Beg your pardon?
Germany.
Very close, it's Russia. The answer is Russia, and Germany also inspired the concept of emergency provisions was inspired by Germany. Okay. Freedom of trade and commerce, Australian Constitution. Freedom of trade and commerce between states, or you can write interstate trade and commerce. Australian Constitution. Center-state relations, Canadian and Australian Constitution. Okay? Center-state relations. procedure established by law has been taken from Japanese constitution? Instead of reading many books and trying to discern this information out, please remember that for your prelims, these notes are going to help you. All you have to do is go through these very specific points. That's all you have to go through. Okay? Alright. Finally, amendment procedure. The amendment procedure has been taken from which constitution? Any responses? No. The South African Constitution. Okay, the online students, have you noted all of these points down?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right.
Yeah.
Any confusions?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
All right. So this basically covers your idea of the Indian Constitution being a modern constitution, right? What's the next feature? Point number 2. It's a written constitution. Okay. Now, what is the importance of a written constitution? To understand that, all you have to do is look at the British system. The British system is the exact opposite of India because they have an unwritten constitution, right? What are the dangers of an unwritten constitution? Nothing is written in a clear-cut way. Everything depends on case law, right? Depending on case law for enforcement of basic civil rights and duties leads to a very chaotic and unjust situation. That is the problem with an unwritten constitution, which is why India has a written constitution, because the constitution framers thought, driven by the experience of the freedom struggle, that the structure of the government or the basic rights and liberties, all of these things have to be laid down in a very clear manner so that no one violates them. Okay? This is your concept of a written constitution. The other features are stuff we have discussed about. You can quickly mention them. It is a welfare state. By welfare state, I essentially mean that the government has the needs of the people at the forefront. It also connects to your concept of socialism.
Sorry, sir, please do.
The concept of a welfare state indicates that the government promotes the needs of the people, needs of all the people. This is connected to socialism. The fourth point you can write secular state. We don't need to discuss much about it. Or secular constitution rather. Fifth point is mentioning of fundamental rights. Okay, so mentioning of fundamental rights. At this point, I would like to just talk a little bit about the US Constitution, okay? In 1789, the American Constitution was enacted. Interestingly, fundamental rights were not mentioned anywhere in the Constitution at all. Because of a lot of opposition, they were added in 1791 through something known as the Bill of Rights, okay? Now, of course, why was there agitation to include that? Because unless you clearly mention that these are the very basic freedoms that have been guaranteed, there is again a risk of violation by whoever is the elected majority, right? This is why mentioning of fundamental rights is an essential ingredient of our constitution itself. It's not there in every constitution, okay? Sixth point, elected government. There is a system of elections that has been provided in the Constitution. You can shortly write down, there are two houses of parliament at the center. Okay, a prelims note, a small prelims note over here. Which article deals with Lok Sabha? Or sorry, which article deals with Rajya Sabha, first of all?
So Article 84.
Article
84.
84 deals with qualification for membership of parliament. You can note that down also, but it does not deal with Lok Sabha per se. By Lok Sabha, I mean which one defines Lok Sabha or tells you that these people are going to be the members, or the, you know, not the qualifications for membership. It's there in Article 79, first of all, Constitution of Parliament. Okay. Article 80 deals with the Council of States. And Article 81 deals with House of the People. Of course, you can also mention, because section 84 is a very important section, qualifications for membership. And right next to Article 80, you can make a small point, because these points that I'm telling you are questions that have been asked previously. Schedule 4 deals with allotment of seats in Rajya Sabha. Schedule 4. Okay. To the points, you can add a few other things. Elections are conducted by the Election Commission with reference to Article 324. Okay.
Sir, Article number?
Elections are conducted with reference to Article 324 by the Election Commission. Article 324 constitutes the Election Commission. And please remember, importantly, the Election Commission deals with elections of only the central government and state government. That is all. Don't come under the misconception that the State Election Commission deals with state elections. Okay? Election Commission at center deals with elections to the center and the states. State Election Commission deals with election to local bodies. By local bodies, I mean your panchayat elections and municipal elections. All right. The next feature of the Constitution, provisions for weaker sections. Okay. Now, at the outset itself, as you have seen in the preamble, it says that we secure to our citizens justice, social, economic and political, right? Now, ensuring this social, economic or political justice begins with your Article 14. Okay. Article 14 says that all persons are equal. Fundamentally it says that. Okay. And this equality, if at all it will be gone against, there has to be a reasonable classification. There has to be a fundamental intelligible differentia, and all of those terms you might have come across. We won't go into that in detail, but just to know how these provisions have been developed. Okay. And then your Article 15 gives the right against discrimination. Article 16 gives you equality in case of employment, but it also through amendments has provided for reservations for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. What are some of the other provisions?
That deals with weaker section.
Yes.
DPSP Article 46.
Very good. All right. There is a very specific part of the Constitution. Like there are parts 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on, right? 22 parts in the Constitution. There is a very specific part in the Constitution that deals with weaker sections. Scheduled castes and scheduled tribes specifically. Please note down, part 16 of the Constitution. Part 16 of the Constitution deals with provisions for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. In part 16, you can check the specific article number. I'm not being able to recall. I think it's 331. It should begin with 330 or 331. From that provision to, I think, 342. Okay? All of these provisions deal with provisions for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. From your prelims perspective, please mention Article 338. This is your National Commission for Scheduled Castes. And 338A, National Commission for Scheduled Tribes. Yes. Article 338A. This deals with National Commission for Scheduled Tribes. Right next to 338, you can mention Article 341. This deals with presidential list of scheduled castes. If any of you are choosing Constitution as a mains paper, please understand that none of these questions will be asked. This is purely from a prelims point of view. You will never be asked to write down the structure and functioning of any of these organizations, and they never ask those questions, or even for that matter elections and all of that. But in your prelims there is a good chance they might ask that. 342 deals with presidential list of scheduled tribes. Okay, online students, have you noted everything down?
Yes, sir.
All right, okay.
Yes, sir.
So let's go into a few more features, just 2 or 3 are left. Before I go further, I want to ask you, what are a few other features that come to your mind? Distinctive features.
Universal.
So it talks about separation of power.
It talks about separation of powers, very good, please write that down. Separation of powers and federal structure.